Well, ladies and gentlemen, so much to look forward to. That London leg looks very exciting indeed, actually. So in the meantime, we move on to our next session. Please give a very warm welcome to Nitin Mantri, one of my colleagues who's going to be introducing our next session. A very warm welcome.
Thanks, thank you. Thank you. And yes, London looks very exciting. IGF taking India to the world. Next session is on insurance and how insurance is going to provide security in a state of where we are in a permanent sort of crisis mode. And I'm very pleased to welcome our two panelists, Amit, Malik, CEO and MD of Aviva Life Insurance, and Varun, founder and CEO of ACKO. Please, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hi, come. Thank you. So, in the last 15 or years or so, we've witnessed financial collapses, a global pandemic, and more. And recently, a return to the kind of state-on-state warfare that you're seeing now. And most people thought, which was probably resigned to the history books, we're not going to have wars anymore, but clearly not. In this sort of what we call a permacrisis, insurance has become very top of mind for consumers in general and people in general. In light of that, Amit, I'm going to kick off with you. Aviva has been, about 300 years old plus organization, and you've weathered some fairly significant storms in that period, including COVID, of course, the recent one. And how do you think this pandemic compares, or this current situation compares to what you've weathered in the last so many, 3 centuries?
That's an interesting question, Nitin. Thanks. If I was to look at it, I'd kind of see it in 3 parts. I think first is from a historical standpoint. Yes, as an organization, we can see we've seen World War I, II, many crises, a pandemic beforehand, and now a pandemic now, so all that journey, and I wouldn't go there. But I think what's important is what's held us good is our values in people. I think that's held us weather this storm, and the customer focus. And also, when you're such an old traditional company, it's your ability to innovate and adapt at the right time. I think that's helped us good from a historical perspective. When I look at COVID and how we've been able to weather crisis, I think there are 2 challenges that that we had and we faced. First is, when the whole world stopped, as I said one day, how do you help the customer kind of continue with it? Because as soon as pandemic started, everyone started to look at their disposable income and say what to do and what not to do. At least in the first phase of COVID, the challenge for us was to convince the customer that you should keep paying your renewal premiums because this is going to help. They realized this by the second phase, but the first phase, that was the challenge. And second, when the amount of adaptability that we had to bring in from a digitization perspective, how we quickly digitized, learned the skills to sell consultingly, which we don't do in a traditional organization. But I think the penny dropped for us was when we realized that while we will have digital tools, we also needed to educate our own customers how to use them. I think that was there. And the third point that I wanted to bring was that I think, before the COVID, people thought of investment as one part of their financial portfolio. The thought now is changing to say this is also one of the risk management techniques for myself and my family. So how I'm de-risking that, and I think that shift is where I think should benefit us.
That's interesting. Varun, coming to you, you launched ACKO about 5 years back, right? And how have you been able to write things out and actually kept on scaling during the pandemic period? I mean, in the morning we heard the FM, and one of the questions that was asked was, has COVID accelerated the unicorn journey? And there was a resounding yes from a lot of participants. So tell us what's happened in the pandemic from an ACKO perspective.
Yeah, so unlike Amit, who has a 300-year legacy, we have a 5-year legacy, out of which 50% has been COVID.
True.
So it's not a legacy to write home about, but I think it taught us quite a few things. To answer your question in terms of digital adoption or unicorn statuses, I think, of course, as much as a tragedy it is what has happened across the globe, it's definitely sort of pushed that adoption to levels that we have not seen before. I personally think, I've been in this business for a while ACKO is about 4 or 5 years old. We've never seen demand for health insurance. There was no better advertisement for health insurance that could have, probably ever happened. When I look at it from a business perspective, we never had to spend on traffic for a product like health insurance. And there were just people coming in by the hordes suddenly to buy health insurance. So I think, yes, we've as an organization had to deal with a lot of things. I think most of our people have been hired during COVID. So a big part of the organization has now come on board post-COVID, given where we are. So I think aligning these people, continuing to service the customer at the point of when you are all haphazard, because you're still growing, you're still setting up your processes and your people, and there are people lying in the hospital who are expecting money from you, and delivering at that point in time, I think that's been, baptism by fire, if I can put it that way. But yes, I think the level of awareness, just the sheer understanding that people have that they need this, rather than the age-old, narrative that we have that insurance is a push product. I don't think the same is true, at least for a large segment of the population anymore.
Yeah, so it's become more of a pull product
Yes.
now. People are searching for insurance.
Absolutely.
We all started with this fact that, Aviva is 300 plus year old, you're 5 years old. You're very kind of different companies, grown very differently, with different kind of legacy, and your legacy is very short so far. Tell me, what do you think you can learn from each other? Aviva, what can Aviva from a 300-year-old company learn from a 5-year-old startup, or a 5-year-old startup learn from the rich legacy heritage of Aviva? You want to go first?
Okay, I think insurance is one of those typical, it's not a hard infrastructure, but some sort of a financial services infrastructure, business, banking and insurance really, develop economies, develop the resilience of a nation in some sense. And I think one of the things for us to learn, and which we look up to the large, balance sheet guys who have survived for hundreds of years, is that they must have done something right to survive, hundreds of years. It's not possible to survive hundreds of years unless you have some things going well for you. Whereas when we juxtapose it to our startup ecosystem, we have a lot more fatalistic ways. Either we succeed or either we succeed beautifully or we just fall by the wayside. I think for us, a 5-year-old company in this space, specifically in this space, I think this area for us to learn is how do we build that endurance? How do we ensure that we look at growth, risk in a well-adjusted manner, and not really specifically when you run a balance sheet business, you should know what not to do. Don't underwrite risks that you don't understand.
Correct.
So I think those are the kind of things that we look up to, because some of these institutions, whether it's a Berkshire Hathaway or an Aviva or a Swiss Re, these have been very disciplined. Not like they've not gone for growth or so on and so forth, but they've been very disciplined with the consumer's money and their own money. I think that's one of the biggest things that we look forward to. We would love to be a company which has at some point a 100-year legacy, but for that we'll have to be fairly disciplined. That's what we look towards.
Okay, discipline.
I think I'm just going to say whatever he said was for them is for us. So when we look at young startups, when we look at ACKO, we envy the agility, the speed, that whole piece that can happen. For us, there's so much of process, there's so much of stuff that you need to unburden. I think it's a mindset that we cherish, that the new age companies bring in, fail fast and dream big. I think how do we bring that mindset into our culture and add it, make it a part along with our processes and the things that have worked for us. I think that is the challenge that we really envy them for. And the other thing, when I look at ACKO specifically, I think I really envy them for the partnerships that they've been able to garner in last few years. And I keep telling my partnership guys, saying, look at them. So I'm going to talk to Varun after this and get some secrets.
Okay, great. So Amit, on that note, you talked about the agility of ACKO and the partnerships they built. So tell me, how are both your company, I'll come to you after this, how was Aviva innovating in these days time? Because I know you've also going through a digital transformation journey. So, how are you innovating and what are the next steps for Aviva?
So, we are just putting the customer in the center and saying, what can we do to make this individual? So my challenge to my team is, why should I even have a customer walk into my branch? Why can't we let that servicing happen? So that's big. So, we were one of the first movers to do a 30-minute decisioning on claims process, where the endeavor was, if you sent us a claims request, how soon can we give you a decision while it gets paid? Similarly, globally, we've embraced digital in a big way. We were discussing about how Aviva Global is and where our learnings are from that whole digital ecosystem that we can look at from not only in India, but learn from our peers outside of India or competition outside. And those test cases, those labs are something that we are getting in. But the idea, again, is to say, how do we simplify the process? From a back end, we will take all the complexity. For the customer, we'll just give the ease. And I think that's the mindset that we are working.
Innovation for ACKO.
So I think we've tried to go back to the root as to, so technology and innovation and all that is possible. But at least at ACKO, we seriously believe technology is a tool to some end outcome. It's not the outcome in itself. So one of the reasons, couple of reasons why, insurance is hard to market or hard to sell or innovate on is primarily because of two reasons that we've at least understood. One is there's no immediate gratification when you buy a product. And a product like insurance, you just don't have any gratification. There's something in the future may help you, so there's no gratification. The second is there's also no need for the customer to talk to you once he's bought it. So there's low engagement and no gratification. This is a hard problem to solve. And most of us who look at our, I'm sure a lot of smart people in the room, when they look at their personal finances, they usually, it's not the best handled that way. There's always room to do better. We put out boring tasks. So this is one of those boring tasks where there's no gratification. So what you really need to do is, in our opinion, the innovation therefore starts from how do you just make that decision first an impulse, reduce the cost of trial, show some small benefit in a way which creates that gratification. That's really the vector on which we are planning our innovation. If I tell you to buy a 20,000 rupee product, you think about it, you don't understand it, and you'll procrastinate. We are all wired for, we're all monkeys, we're all wired for something here and now, right? Like it's hard to, think intelligently far ahead. So I think the innovation vector that we're looking at is, hey, can I insure your mobile phone when you're impulsively when you're buying it, because that's something you want. There's consumerism in it. You want the newest iPhone, and you don't want the screen to break. That's an impulse I can latch onto. That's when you're traveling, that's an impulse. We partner with Prashant meaningfully. We're trying to innovate on that side, on the travel side. These kind of products sort of get customers into the fold. And when they suddenly see value, if you can delight them at that point, then they start moving up the ladder. Okay, here's, I purchased my mobile phone insurance. Now let me also insure all the gadgets at home, because it's just convenient. Now I've realized it's convenient. I think you need to take customers along with you in a journey. That's really how we're looking at it. I don't think you can say, here's my big bang product and please buy it.
Got it.
Yeah. Nitin, just to add on to what Varun said and build on, I think from our own industry perspective, the challenge that we are facing when you talk of innovation in future is how do we start to hyper-personalize the product for the individual, and from there we would need a regulatory support. How do we come in? And that hyper-personalization is what the customer is going to ask. I think, when you are underwriting me, you're looking at my medical data, you're looking at my financial data. Are you also looking at my health data? Are you going to give me credit for all the good things that I've been doing? And how do you build that in from an engine standpoint? I think those are the stuff that one would have to look at.
Fair enough. We have a couple of minutes before I ask my next question. If there's any question in the audience, really happy to take a question or two. Yeah.
I have a question regarding insurance underwriting. The concept of insurance is to spread risk. So why is it that insurance companies are always trying to charge you a higher price if, as you said, for all these good things you're giving us a discount, but the whole concept of insurance is. So I have a problem with, somebody who's sick has to now pay double the insurance. Or somebody who had an accident now suddenly has to pay double the insurance. Because accidents happen, and that's the whole concept of insurance. That you spread the risk across a lot of people so that everybody's not claiming at the same time. So, what is the underwriting process and why is it always sort of stacked up against the consumer?
Yeah, you should look at the profitability of the industry and you may reverse your process that it's not, because if that was the case, the insurance companies would be making a ton of money, which I can assure you they're not. But let me attempt that. And I'll bucketize, something like car insurance and health insurance. These are very different subjects, and we all this has been my pet peeve. We all sort of put all of insurance in one big bucket. In car insurance, yes, your premium jacks up if you have an accident. There are two issues with it. One, of course, insurance companies want to theoretically I say, promote safe driving behavior. And therefore, if you have a claim, you have to pay more because if you have more claims, your cost of insurance goes up. The challenge in India, however, is there is nothing called establishing fault. So you could be stationary and somebody else could just come and bang into you. And theoretically, that guy's insurance should be paying for your claim. That doesn't happen in India because our law enforcement, establishing whose fault, no fault claim, and so on and so forth is just let me say where we are. It's too difficult at how we've so that should ideally happen. So you are paying only for your own fault. That is also if you're constantly having accidents. If you have one-off accident in 3-4 years, that won't jack up your premium. Here, the no-fault concept doesn't come in India because law enforcement doesn't. If you go to Dubai and you have an accident, everything just stalls. The police will come and establish whose fault it is, and that guy's insurance pays it. So you don't have to pay. So that concept doesn't hold here. So everybody's premium kind of slightly jacks up in some sense. On health insurance, what you say, ma'am, is incorrect. You're not allowed to raise premiums after somebody falls sick. I don't know the case on life insurance, but you cannot. So let's say we underwrite someone and God forbid they get cancer 5 years after they bought our policy. We cannot jack up their rates. The rates are fixed, and that's the whole design that the regulator follows, and I think it's a fair design that you cannot. The whole purpose of buying it was to protect you from such an eventuality. So what tends to happen and why the perception maybe comes in is that as overall medical inflation happens, every 3-4 years companies raise rates because hospitals, advancement of procedures, everything is getting expensive. And once the insurance companies have to foot the bill, every 3-4 years they would raise rates generally. But they would not raise rates for a specific person to say, hey, you got sicker, so I'm going to charge you higher. That they're not even allowed to do by law. So overall the rates go up for everyone, not just the person who's unfortunately been sick.
Great, thank you. Amit, any views on that?
No, I think on the life insurance, it's the same. When we evaluate, we may give you a different rate than what the salesperson would have, depending on your medical record and history. But once we agree, before we issue, we tell you what the rate is, and if you are agreeable, then that stays till the term of the policy.
Great. Thank you. Time's up. So thank you for patient listening. And Amit, Varun, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.